Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're looking at a piece of writing that, well, at first glance might seem like a super niche diary entry about aquarium fish, but trust me on this, it's actually a brilliant little case study on how we make decisions, how we set boundaries, and ultimately how we define our true passions. We're going to unpack this meticulously detailed blog post by a highly specialized hobbyist named Ang, and honestly, in just a few short sentences, Ang manages to hit on a completely universal struggle. You know, that tension between being totally captivated by something new and recognizing when it simply doesn't align with our ultimate goals. Okay, let's dive into this. The source material opens up with this beautifully intimate, almost retro digital diary greeting. Dear Interweb, continues from my previous post. Now I want you to look at that title right there. Notes on Fishkeeping Part 260. Part 260. I mean, just take a second to marvel at the sheer, intense dedication and, let's be real, maybe slightly obsessive passion it takes to actually reach the 260th installment of any personal project. This immediately tells us we aren't just reading the fleeting thoughts of a beginner. No way. We're stepping into the mind of someone with deep, persistent, and highly structured expertise. So, moving into Section 1, the familiar face. An old curiosity. Let's see how this builds, right? Because every great decision usually starts with a temptation. Our author Ang describes recently encountering a fish that looked incredibly familiar. And after checking back through those meticulous notes we just talked about, Ang realizes this exact species was actually already documented quite some moons ago, all the way back in Part 96. I mean, think about the huge span of time between Part 96 and Part 260, which was published on May 19th, 2026. This timeline is absolutely crucial because it shows us that this isn't some hasty, impulsive choice. It's the resurfacing of an old curiosity. The fish has literally come back into Ang's knife, forcing a definitive, final verdict today. It's exactly that moment we all face when an old idea or a project we shelved years ago suddenly pops back up and demands an answer. Do we pursue it this time, or do we finally let it go for good? Now, what's really fascinating here is the specific subject of Ang's dilemma. It's the Banded Leporinus, or scientifically speaking, leporinus-fasciatus. Ang describes this fish as intriguing and unique. It's the shiny new object, or actually, scratch that, it's the shiny returning object. But Ang uses this specific fish to make a much larger point. Basically, just because something is unique and intriguing doesn't automatically mean it's suitable for everyone. This specific aquatic creature becomes our micro case study for a massive macro theme. How exactly do we say no to intriguing things? How do we evaluate potential when our time and resources are, strictly limited? Which brings us to Section 2, the major deal breakers, practical realities. So shifting over to those practical realities, the crucial point here is how Ang systematically dismantles the temptation of the Banded Leporinus. We see three major discouraging factors presented. First, the obvious lack of required space. The text notes this is a larger species, and large species require massive physical footprints. You literally can't just wish away spatial limitations. Second, the high cost of the fish. Financial boundaries are rigid, and investing heavily in one area means sacrificing another. And third, the overall aesthetic. Even though it's intriguing, the specific look of the fish just doesn't hit the right notes for the author. I want you to take a moment to really let those resonate. Space, money, aesthetic alignment. These are the exact, immovable roadblocks that bring even the absolute most seasoned, passionate hobbyist right back down to earth. But I gotta ask you a question as we look at this. Are these practical factors, space, money, and subjective looks, truly enough to stop a seasoned hobbyist? I mean, if you really truly love exploring new species, couldn't you just build a bigger tank? Couldn't you save up the money over time? Usually, when people are wildly passionate about a hobby, they find a way to smash right through logistical constraints. So is there something deeper driving Ang's firm no? What is the absolute bottom line here? And that leads us to Section 3, keeping versus breeding, the ultimate goal. This is where the explainer shifts from simple aquarium logistics into a fantastic philosophical climax. And this brilliantly illustrates the core of Ang's entire mindset. The text draws a super hard line between two very different activities. On one side, we have fish keeping. Ang notes that some fish are great for keeping, but this relies on passive aesthetic enjoyment. You put the fish in the tank, you feed it, you look at it. It's essentially consumption. But on the other side, we have fish breeding. This is the ultimate goal for our author. It requires active cultivation. It demands that you embrace friction, solve complex environmental problems, and actually create something new. Ang rejects the Banded Leporinus, not just because it's big and expensive, but because it is ultimately a fish meant for keeping, not breeding. It just doesn't serve that higher active purpose. Look closely at this quote directly from the source. And for me, the real passion lies in the challenge of fish breeding itself, rather than just fish keeping. It's such an interesting realization, isn't it? True passion, for Ang, isn't found in the simple acquisition of a rare or intriguing thing. It isn't found in the easy, passive enjoyment of just looking at a cool fish. The passion is found in the difficulty. The passion is the challenge itself, the process, the struggle, the act of cultivation. That is where the joy actually lives. Which brings us to the end of our explainer and to a question I really want to leave you with today. Think about the projects, the hobbies, and the goals that you dedicate your own time to. When you look at the things you fill your life with, are you simply collecting them for passive enjoyment? Are you just keeping? Or are you actively embracing the difficult, rewarding challenge of cultivating something greater? Are you breeding? It's a pretty powerful distinction drawn from part 260 of a fish keeping diary, but it's one that can completely reframe how we pursue our own true passions. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this text, and I really hope it leaves you thinking about the challenges you choose to embrace.